Hello, madam. Sudha, madam.
Yes, sir.
Sir joined,
No, sir. I informed him he'll be joined. He told within 2 minutes he'll join.
Okay, madam. Join பண்ண உடனே அப்படி யார் MC?
Chief guest introduction, welcome address by you, sir. Chief guest introduction by Suganti ma'am, sir.
சரி, இல்ல அப்படி இல்ல யார் MC நீங்க தானா?
I will be doing, sir.
அப்படியே கொஞ்சம் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிருங்க. சார் ஜாயின் பண்ணிட்டாரா ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிருங்க.
Okay, sir. 2 minutes.
Madam, I think sir joined. Sir, good morning, sir.
Sir joined and then again he left.
Any issues in the audio?
No, sir. No, sir. I'll verify, sir. Sir.
Madam, சார கொஞ்சம் அன்மியூட் பண்ணுங்க.
Sir, I had done, sir. I had done.
இல்ல எப்ப பண்ணீங்களா?
இல்ல again I think he left and I joined again, sir. So that
no, now again, madam. Sir, good morning, sir. Murugan, sir.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good morning,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Sorry.
Good morning, sir. Glad to meet you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So,
sir, shall we start, sir?
yes, we can start. So, can somebody share?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You please share your PPT, sir.
Okay, one minute.
Yes, sir. It is now visible, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Madam, Sudha, madam. Hello.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, madam. You please start the event.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay, morning all. So this is Murugan Kantaya.
Sir,
Sir, one second, sir.
Sir, one second, sir.
1 second, sir. Cloud is about how you do computing, not where you do computing. With the cloud, individuals and small businesses can snap their fingers and instantly set up enterprise class services. Wishing you all a very glad and happy morning to everyone present here. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of SRM Institute of Science and Technology for the international webinar on cloud migration organized by the Department of Computer Science and Application. Now, I invite our dynamic Vice Principal Admin, SNH, Dr. J. Dilipan, to deliver the welcome address. Please, sir.
Thank you, madam. A very warm good morning to one and all. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to this international webinar on cloud migration organized by Department of Computer Science and Applications. First of all, I would like to extend my hearty welcome to our chief guest, Mr. Murugan Kandaya, Project Manager, UST Global, USA, with a deep appreciation for accepting our invitation in spite of his busy schedule. I take great pleasure in welcoming the event coordinator, faculty members, and students for this wonderful session. as you are aware that the cloud computing is the wave of the future, and many industries, they are using the cloud and they are migrating their services and the day-to-day operations to the cloud computing recently. And it is the process of moving data and applications and database and all the elements which is related to the industries are now they are moving to the cloud. So it is very, very useful for the business peoples for the improving the business transactions and productivity and day-to-day operational efficiency. Our guest is very, very specialist in this area. I'm sure that this session will be as an eye-opening session to you all. So once again, I welcome you all to this wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the very warm welcome. I'm glad to be part of this discussion. I'm just sharing my knowledge here. I still learn a lot about cloud migration, and I just share whatever I know so far. Okay. So thank you, and we will just start from here. So the objective of this discussion is going to be we are just going to know what is cloud, what's the purpose of cloud migration, what's the strategy that we follow, or what are the general strategies followed by companies during cloud migration, what are the industry challenges, and then we'll talk about some real world examples, and then we'll open up for any question and answers. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Sir, we want to give just an introduction about you, sir, for 2 minutes, please, sir.
Oh, sure.
Now, I call upon Dr. Suganti, Assistant Professor, MCA, to introduce our chief guest. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my pleasure to introduce today's session guest, Mr. Murugan Kandaya. Welcome you, sir. He started his career from 2000 onwards. Mr. Murugan Kandaya is working in the past decades in IT sector in various domains like retail, healthcare, and commercial insurances. Solid experience and exposure to multiple software development lifecycle like staff augmentation, managed services, waterfall, iterative method, and agile methodologies, including Scrum and Kanban practices. He is acting as a program manager in Walmart Data Strategy Insights and acted as Scrum Master, our agile platform, and active contributor of Walmart Merchant Domains, Google Cloud Platform migration. He done many projects in Java, Hadoop, BigQuery, Druid, Google Cloud Platform, Scala, .NET, and more. He earned various certifications like Advanced Scrum Master, Product Manager, Product Owner, Project Management Professionals, Certified Scrum Master, ITIL Foundations level in various institutions as Safe Academy, PMI, Good Agile, TUV, SUD. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Sir, now the session is yours, sir. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so just to remind, so we'll talk about what is cloud, and then we'll talk about the purpose of cloud migration, why all companies are rushing to move into cloud migration. And then we'll talk about the different strategies involved in cloud migration. And then we'll talk about industry challenges, some real world examples. We'll talk about even my own project where what's going on, what are the challenges. So those kind of examples we'll talk about, and then finally we will open up for questions. Okay. Okay. So first, what is cloud? Everybody in this world talks about cloud migration. Almost all companies are moving to cloud. So what is cloud? Cloud is nothing but moving to a large distributed computing infrastructure. What does that mean? Why do we need to go there? So the very simple example that I think of correlating between cloud migration to our day-to-day life is, say, 20 years before. I know in our homes, when there is a marriage or a function, what we do, we call for a cook. We'll have to, get him his dates. We'll have to, get all the vegetables, groceries, everything that he listed. We'll have to put it in a storeroom. We'll have to make sure it is guarded by somebody. And then whatever things that cook is asking, every time we'll have to keep giving it to him, the right quantity. We'll have to make sure they are using it in the right manner. And then finally, we'll have to ensure all the unused groceries are returned. And then, so there's a lot of work involved in this, lot of manual effort is involved in this, lot of, manual policing is involved in this. Whereas what happens in today's functions, we just, give 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees a meals, and, everything is served on our table, based on our choice, based on, what we decide, based on the, the number of guests, the place where the wedding is happening or any function is happening. So it's the same, exactly what is happening in today's marriage. It's exactly happening in today's computational world. So previously, companies used to run their own servers. They'll have to maintain their VMs. They'll have to, first they'll have to install, they'll have to upgrade, they'll have to make sure the security is all, taken care. They'll have to do support, production support, on-call support every 24/7. So it's all manual, it's laborious, it's, very strenuous. And then, when there are issues, there could be production downtimes, which leads to, business impact. So by eliminating all these issues, what the companies are trying to do today is trying to hire an computational infrastructure somewhere, by a third-party company, where they provide everything as a service. They maintain everything. They do the security check. They do the maintenance. They ensure the cloud computation is available, 24/7, and then it is sorry, and then it is accessible across the team, across the globe, everywhere. So the companies doesn't have the have to worry about maintaining maintaining the servers, maintaining the security, upgrading the servers, and all those things. So that so the cloud ensures that access can be the company people, the customers, anybody based on their role. So the cloud ensures this. I'm sorry, 1 minute. The cloud ensures the access to everybody across the globe, and at the same time, it ensures the right authority is being applied, so that gives the right access to the right people at the right time. So that is being ensured, and then the 24/7 availability is ensured, and then the performance is ensured. When I talk about performance, it is about even though the application, everything runs in a server that is not seen, the performance is less than is ensured. They meet the SLA, which could be in seconds or microseconds. So that is how the performance is maintained. Next, we'll talk about the purpose. So the first and the main purpose of cloud migration is scalability. So what is meant by scalability? The amount of data keeps growing wherever we go, whatever data that we use. Let's talk about an individual as we use. We have Gmail account, we have Facebook account, we have WhatsApp account. We have so many other mail accounts in our own official college student accounts. Everywhere we store tremendous amount of data, and it has to be stored somewhere, and it has to be retrieved within a certain amount of time. So this data keeps growing, and the infrastructure teams are facing a mammoth problem of storing the information and then providing access to the information within a fraction of seconds. So that becomes the major purpose for all companies to move to cloud. When the data is stored in on-prem services, the storage costs company a lot of money, And then the retrieval, the maintenance, again, everything costs a lot of money. So obviously scalability is the primary force, primary driver for any cloud migration. Next is digital experience. So the data, today's data, even the company applications, the reports, everything can be viewed through, laptops, iPads, mobile phones. You name a device, we should be able to access those reports and data through these devices. So cloud gives us a clear digital experience for end users, for company associates, and for everybody who are in use. So obviously that becomes the next primary driver for the cloud migration. The third one is the cost. As I discussed earlier, so you have to set up an on-prem server, you have to maintain that, you have to ensure on-call support for everything needs money, manpower, effort, and so on. So instead of this, what we do is in cloud, based on the usage, we just pay the money. So it's as simple as that, like how we select a Netflix account. It's the same way companies can select multiple plans based on their usage, based on their available, based on their business requirements. They can select the multiple plans, and the plans are customized for individual companies. So cost is another driving factor for the cloud migration. Next is the performance. Again, when I talk about performance, it is performance of the infrastructure, the performance of the application, the performance of the the availability of the data, and so on. So business obviously is very closely related to the performance of data, performance of applications, performance of the any web apps that the business use. So obviously performance is top priority for business and is one of the driving factor for cloud migration. So let's talk about the top 10 cloud providers. Obviously the number one is Amazon, and then we have, from Microsoft we have Azure. Obviously Google is a major player. Now recently Alibaba is emerging as a great player from China, and then we have other conventional players like Salesforce, Dell, IBM, DigitalOcean, Adobe, Dropbox, and so on. So everybody, there is even though this is an emerging technology, there are already competing forces, which is making the providers compete in their price, compete in their services, compete in customizing their services to their respective business requirements. And so obviously the end users are getting the benefits of this competition among these top players. Again, beyond this, there are multiple other, even the startups are also competing on this environment, but then they are not able to do to the scale of these top 10 providers. However, they are going to be the challenges, for these top 10 providers in the near future. So that is going to be, the competition is going to be from the startups to these top 10 providers. That's the amount of competition we have, among these cloud providers. So again, that's a great, that's going to be a great benefit for the end users based on this, competition here in cloud. Next, we'll talk about the strategies involved here. So here, again, based on the nature of the business, based on the amount that any company can invest for the cloud migration, or based on the time they can spend in the cloud migration, they decide the strategy here. So there are, they call this as 4 5s or 4 Rs or 5 Rs, and then they call this, they decide a single strategy, or sometimes a combination of multiple strategies. So and then sometimes they completely go and buy everything newly from a different company. So the first strategy is rehost. Rehost is nothing but lift and shift, meaning they just redeploy the existing data and application, from the source to the target. Now, what is source? Source could be the on-prem database like Oracle's DB2, SQL Server, Teradata, anything of those even Hadoop, anything of those kind. And then the target will be GCP, GCS Cloud, and so on, or BQ, BigQuery, and so on. So this is direct lift and shift, no changes. You have table A in Teradata, you just move that to BigQuery or GCS. So that they are this is a direct lift and shift, no business changes. They just compare the data between the source and the target. They just see the tally. They just tally between the table to table between the source and target. Tally the columns of each tables between source and target. And then they just count the number of records, the volume of data, everything, and then they say this migration is successful. The next is the refactor. This is like they slightly tweak. It's again a lift and shift, but then they slightly tweak in between. Meaning they lift the data from the source. They try to change something, meaning they add some intellect in between to avoid duplicate data, to avoid redundant information across tables or databases, and then they shift the data to this target, which could be BQ, GCS, or GCP. So there's a slight tweak or change in between. So that is called refactor. Next is the revise. Here they make fundamental architectural changes. They don't do a lift and shift here. There is a lot of planning, designing, and coding that would be required here. Significant changes will be required right from the architecture to the design to the coding, and then enormous amount of testing will be required. Lot of data validations will be required. So this is going to be very expensive and at the same time very time consuming exercise. But then the advantage will be they will ensure they have the target that is of best use for their business. Meaning they will ensure a highly intellectual system is there in the target, which could be BQ, GCS, or whatever it could be, and then they'll ensure they gain the full advantage out of the the migration. So that is about the revise strategy. Next is complete rebuild or replace. So even in the revise strategy, they will try to leverage what they could leverage, what they could still take up the existing data and application. They'll try to see what can be leveraged and what needs to be changed and what needs to be removed. Whereas in the rebuild, it's like complete rebuild. They just put down the existing data, existing application. They'll have to start it from the scratch, do everything from the beginning, and they come out with this migration. Replaces like if they don't have the manpower or the methodology to rebuild or revise the cloud migration, they try to purchase from a third-party vendor. They just give their requirements, their business requirements, their technical requirements, and then purchase everything from the the third-party vendor. So sometimes there could be combination of these strategies. So again, it is highly, it's a very complex process when it comes to the real world decision making, because money is involved, time is involved, and then the amount of other business priorities they'll have to go through, and then what's the amount or what's the dollar amount they have for the cloud migration, and then what's the amount of people they have for the cloud migration tasks. So everything they'll have to consider here while they define and redefine and refine their cloud migration strategy. Next is the approach. it's a very simple SQL approach. You first assess the options. You'll first decide whether the cloud migration is really required for them or not. And they might see what is the business requirement, what is their their current way of doing things. They'll try to see what are the advantages of the current on-prem services. What would be the advantage when they move to cloud? So they'll try to do a design in their drawing board, try to theoretically come out with what is happening today, what could happen after the cloud migration, and if those results are really required for their business users and so on. And not only from the business users, sometimes the technical department also decides the approach, the need for the cloud migration and so on. Next is their piloting. So they try to take up one small area from their business function. They try to do a small amount of data from say for example, if there's a big retail business, they cannot try migrating the data from all departments. So what they will do is they'll take one small department within their business function. Say for example, they'll try to see their sales data. They'll try to move only the sales data from their on-prem services to cloud and see how this this really works, how this migration really works for the technology department, how this works for the business users, what are the challenges they face, is it really doable for their entire company, whole enterprise. So everything they'll try to assess during their piloting stage. Next is if after they decide, okay, this strategy is going to work, they are going to move all the data to cloud. That once the decision is taken towards the end of the piloting stage, they first start moving the data, all the raw data, the consumption data, or any report data, from the target to the destination first. So once the data movement is done, meaning basically they'll try to move all their existing data from their targets, or from their source, like DB2 or SQL Server or Teradata or Hadoop. Using all these strategies, they'll try to finalize the strategies by then, and then they'll move the data. So when we move this data, that is when they will start facing the real challenges, meaning the amount of data that is running in their source data, in their source system, may not react to the same way when they move to the cloud. So what the amount of the kind of challenges that they face is like, number one is some of the technical functions that are used in their source may not be working in their target. Meaning, say for example, now they assume that they move the data from Teradata to cloud. So in Teradata, whatever SQL functions that they are using now may not be acceptable, or which may not be running correctly in their BQ environment. So then they'll have to customize that particular function. They'll have to ensure that data validation is done properly. The source data versus they'll have to do a comparison between the source data versus the target data. Make sure both are same, because there is a change happening in their business function now. That's business logical function. It could be business function, it could be technical function, but at the end of the day, they'll have to make sure the data is the same both in source as well as target. So this is how the challenge starts. Next, they move the application. Now the application is owned and used by so many end users. Now in a big retail chain, the users could be of like, say, millions of users. So if you want to move millions of users, again, you will have to use a strategy. Again, they will have to come back to this original strategy, find out which strategy would benefit the user as well as the technical department. and then they'll move forward with the application migration. So during this time, there will be even more challenges because for users, this will be new. They would not like to go to a new environment because they would have been fine with their existing technology, the way it works. So if there is any change, if there is any challenge, the users generally don't accept those changes. They will exactly expect whatever is there in their source system. So that is something. So another huge challenge, because convincing the end users is a mammoth task. It's not as easy as we talk to individuals, because every department will have to sign off this data movement, and as well as the application movement. So it is a huge challenge from the execution standpoint, from the planning as well as execution standpoint, and even from the communication standpoint, because this becomes a major change, and it becomes a point where, as an enterprise, whether the business would really need to agree to this change or not. So once the data is moved, once the applications are moved, finally they'll have to go and do the optimization. So when it comes to optimization, it's again, they will have to ensure the data is exactly the same as the source data. They'll have to ensure the availability of the data, meaning there should be zero downtime, and then all the functions, the format, the storage, the performance, everything has to be in line with the source system. When I say performance, now in retail chain, again, we will have to build a weekly status report of, say, sales. So generally what a business will do, big retail, like, say Flipkart or, Amazon, what they will do, they'll try to see a daily, weekly, monthly sales report, or a daily, weekly, monthly inventory report, daily, weekly, monthly finance report, meaning they'll see how much is in store, how much is being invested in a warehouse, what are the items that are moving fastly, what are the items that are not moving, which they may have to apply discount, and so on. So all these kind of reports, to generate a weekly report, the technical system will have to go through billions of records, but then the result is expected in nanoseconds or fraction of second. So that is the challenge that we have. So assume that if the current performance is, or the SLA standard is say 2 seconds or 3 seconds for the full cycle, meaning if the end user do a search for a specific criteria, say for example he wants a sales data from, say, last week to this week, he just selects in an application. Within 2 seconds, the entire weekly data has to be rerun. They'll have to compare against the previous week's data and then provide the variations, whether it is upward the link or then upward or downward. All those data has to be retrieved. It has to be visibly shown to the customer within 2 seconds. And if the system takes more than 2 seconds, nobody from the business is going to look into that report, because they lose interest, because they are already not liking the new change. And if the system hangs for more than 2 seconds, people may not like it, and they say, we want to stick with our existing system. So that's the amount of challenge we have. So the IT department will have to see what is their current SLA, from their source system. Say if their current SLA is 2 seconds, then they'll have to achieve either 2 seconds or less than that. Only then the end users will be interested to go into the cloud migration, and they'll be ready to access the data from the cloud. So this is the sequential approach that generally any company would follow. It is very tough in the real world than how we talked as of today. Next, we will talk about the security risks because of this cloud migration. So once we move the data to cloud, again, based on the security features that the cloud providers have, all these transactions or the data computations happen in a hidden environment, meaning everything will be encrypted within the cloud services. So nobody will be able to say, what is being sent, what is being, retrieved, and so on. But then the challenge is, especially business users like say the hospitals or any healthcare systems, that their data is very sensitive, and same is the case with the financials. Say for example, a bank data or a financial institution data, it's a very highly secure data, and they are like not so comfortable with something that is happening on the third parties infrastructure, where they couldn't see what is happening there. So that's a major challenge the industry faces today, the security risk. And we all know what kind of security risks or kind of news that we get every day. And as of today, we get hacking the data, you get hacking the account, we see money being dropped from the account after hacking. We see the data being compromised from all the, even from the bank, from the credit card, from the healthcare system, and so on. So so assume that if a company by mistake, if their data is compromised due to some technological reasons, they will have to pay millions of dollars as penalty to the government. And at the same time, if any individuals from the public sue the company, again they will end up in a big legal battle, and there again they will have to pay millions and billions of dollars there. So security is a huge challenge the industry faces. Next is the compliance. As I said, in USA in particular, we have acts like HIPAA and then SOX, HIPAA for the healthcare, and then for SOX for the financial, where every month and every year, each company will have to provide some amount of reports to the government on what kind of compliances, especially the security compliances that each company is doing. So assume that if upgrade is happening in a cloud, so they need to know what exactly is happening on the cloud, how is the data being processed, and without proper understanding, without proper technological know-how, they will not be able to provide all these complaints reports to governments or any regulatory authorities, which is again will become a legal battle to any company. So no business will be ready to face those complaints legal battle. So obviously that is their biggest challenge from the business execution standpoint. Next is the lack of expertise. Now we have tremendous amount of people, the technology SMEs on cloud, the technology SMEs on data, security experts are there across the globe, but still the industry needs more security experts, more data experts, more analyst experts, especially when it comes to performance, improving performance, maintaining the data, migrating the data from one place to another, and so on. So we need huge amount of expertise required. Obviously, anything that is available today is not required. So whether it is India, whether it is US, whether it is UK or Australia, wherever we go, the expertise is again a major concern, irrespective of how many people or how many expertise we have in each country. Next is the total cost of ownership. Now, the main reason companies migrate is cloud. Migrate to cloud is they want to reduce their operational costs, but at the same time, over a period of time, the cost involved in this migration becomes huge, because any company will have more data compared to their previous year. Say, for example, if a company handles 1 terabyte of data or 10 terabyte of data in 2020, as their business grows, by 2021 their data volume grows almost by 20-30%, minimum of 20-30%. Now, if there is sometimes business grows rapidly, at that time, the growth can be of 60 to 80%. Then in that case, the amount of the cost they'll have to pay to the cloud obviously increases a lot. And so if you see the total cost of ownership, it is again becoming a burden to the individual business enterprises. When they compare, like say, initially they might feel that it is cheaper compared to the on-prem services, but then after 5 years, after 8 years, they feel that this is going to be the same as what we did in on-prems. That kind of perception they might get based on the cost, based on the the amount of contacts they'll have to involve with this cloud providers. That's another bigger challenge from the industry standpoint. Next is the governance and control, which we already talked about. So each company will have to provide complaints reports. They'll have to provide reports that that are required for the governance from the regulatory authority, from the the board committee, from various other regulatory authorities, whether it could be governmental, it could be from the shareholders, it could be from the any of the end user community. Because say for example, again, because I'm part of the retail chain, I'm just taking those as examples. In the retail chain, they'll have to see, one good example could be they'll have to show data like how much are they green every year. When I say green, they'll have to show reduction in their their consumption in energy. So that could be electrical energy, that could be the amount of wastage like plastics, and they'll have to literally show by data like how green they are compared to last year. So those kind of reports need again enormous amount of data to be collected, to be shared, to be customized for any governmental or third-party governance committees. So that is again a big challenge for them. Next is the multi-cloud management. So now assume that a company, a big retail giant like Walmart or Amazon is relying on one single cloud. Now, what happens if all of a sudden that particular cloud technology is down for a day or for 2 days? So their business, they may not be able to run their business. They cannot even run their billing. They cannot run their day-to-day activities. So that becomes a huge challenge from their day-to-day running standpoint. So obviously they will end up doing multi-cloud migration or multi-cloud data management to avoid, number one, to avoid monopoly, to avoid dependency of one company on one company, and then they also need to ensure their business continuity, their disaster recovery, and so on. So they have a lot of other challenges on a day-to-day basis where they will have to literally work on all these factors. So that is another challenge that they face. Next, we'll talk about the future of cloud. So where are we today? How is it going to be in the next 5 years or 7 years down the line? Obviously, there is competition among the cloud players. If you see, the Alibaba is emerging, really emerging in the top 3 or 4 players. They are trying to compete with Google, and they are almost in the 3rd position today. So the reshuffling of the service providers is already happening. We are expecting more, especially when there are startups that grow up. We expect more startups to be in the to evolve as a dominant player, to compete with all these top providers. And we do not know, like Alibaba, tomorrow any company, and even Indian companies like Zogo are competing in this space. In future, they might become number 1 in the cloud space. We do not know. So there's a heavy competition on this, which could help the end user, but at the same time, the technology could change. The way the cloud migration happens and the strategies would all, change. So that is something that keeps happening, that will keep happening, going forward. The next thing is the edge computing. So today what happens is we have edge nodes available when the data operations happen. So what is edge node? Edge node is nothing but, see, when you, as I said, when you want to create one single sales report, you will have to access billions of records in a day. Say, for example, if you want to know, like on Monday morning, if the business wanted to know how their business sales is going, whether it is on the upward trend or in the downward trend compared to their last week sales for each department. Say, for example, when I say department, within a retail giant, you might have multiple, departments like jewelry, apparel, sports. And so there are so many, gardening, outdoor games, indoor games. So there are so many departments within a retail giant. So grocery, and then, fresh foods. There are so many, dairy. There could be multiple departments within a retail giant. So for every department, they will have to compute this data, collect all this data for a week, compare it against the previous week, and then visualize, provide a visualization area to compare this week's data versus the last week's data. So all this computation is what is a real challenge for them to meet this 2-second or 1-second SLA. So today that happens in an edge node. So they collect the data from the database, and then they have a very high speed processing that happens in the edge node. And once the computation happens in the edge node, they again process the data back to the database. And then this is how they meet their 2-second, 3-second SLA as of today. So the computations actually happen in the edge node, whereas the data remains in the database. It could be Teradata, SQL, Oracle, whatever it could be. But when it comes to cloud, so what is going to happen is all this, again, accessing the data from the cloud, doing all these computations, and then again, providing the report back to the cloud is going to take more time. And so obviously that is where this edge computing is coming to existence, where all these computations will happen within the cloud, in the same processor where the data is stored in the cloud, but at the same time with much more competent edge nodes are going to be evolving. So that is one another new concept that is evolving, that all the companies are very curiously looking into this. And even the top providers like Amazon and Azure and Google, they are actively working on this edge computing, trying to compete with each other and provide good services to the end users. Next is the artificial intelligence engineering. So this AI is again very disruptive in nature when it comes to the technological trends. So what happens is AI data could be of multiple formats. It could come from any kind of devices. It could, and then the amount of data could be voluminous. So it is very disruptive when it comes to the nature of data that the business is handling today. So obviously, cloud is trying to focus on this AI data and see how they can process this data as fast as they could. Next is the multi-cloud management, which we already talked about. No company is going to rely on single cloud. Everybody is going to rely on multiple cloud. This again adds cost to them, but still they want to, every individual business is interested to do. More to that, rather than relying on this public cloud services like Amazon or Google or Azure, they wanted to build their own cloud. They call that as a private cloud. So they try to understand what is happening on the cloud, and they try to imitate this cloud technology into their own customization. They want to build their own cloud. That way, number one, their cost can be reduced. The overall, even their cloud migration cost can be reduced. Their overall, the total cost of ownership can be reduced, and still they will maintain their data in the cloud. but will they be able to? Will every company be able to do that? Maybe not. Especially big companies can do, but small companies may not be able to do that. They will have to rely on this public clouds. But then many big technological giants will be able to do this, and that is going to be a challenge for all these top providers again, where they'll have to compete with them on the cost. So that is going to be a bigger challenge again. Next is going serverless, because the way the hardware companies are changing, or how they upgrade their system, especially for security as well as for other operational performance standards. They are trying to go serverless, and obviously cloud also will have to work on this serverless solutions, which is again it's going to be a challenge in future. All companies are working towards that, and that is going to be a major feature going forward. Next is the automated cloud orchestration and optimization, which is again a continuous optimization will keep happening, and they try to automate as much as they can. So even today, this automation is there, but then they try to see what else can be automated. That way, all this they meet the performance, they delight the customers, and so on. Next is the increased cloud management and cost containment challenges. This again, so if you see, as of today, I think the overall the cloud migration activities is somewhere around $220 to $280 billion, as of today, and it is going to reach to almost $400 to $500 billion in the near future, which means more companies are going to migrate to cloud. So obviously, there will be competition, and then new players are emerging in. So obviously, there will be there will be pressure on the cost, and even because more companies are coming in, there will be pressure even from the end user community, asking them to reduce their price. So that is going to be a challenge for them, because even all these providers will have to spend a good amount of time in maintaining, upgrading, making sure there is zero downtime and all those things. So they'll have to do on-call support. They'll have to do the ensure 100% availability, zero downtime, and then keep upgrading the security features. And then they'll have to make sure all their day-to-day activities logs are all done. So that's going to cost them again. Even though some are automated, there will be manual effort there. So that is adding cost to the cloud providers, and they are researching on these topics as of today. So the main challenge, from whether from the end users or from the cloud providers, there are challenges across the globe. They do talk about, they try to spread their knowledge. They try to, gather the users' requirements. They try to see as much as they can. That way, they wanted to limit the downtime. They wanted to ensure, complete security upgrades, because anywhere they could fail. If there is a security lapse in, say, any of these clouds, obviously, their reputation gets a big beating, and everybody will, even the existing people who are there with them, will try to pull out from there and then move to a different cloud. So cloud providers never wanted those things to happen. So they are in a race to upgrading their security systems, upgrade their performance, reduce their cost. So obviously, it is a tight race for them as well. And even from the end user standpoint, migration is a mammoth task. The migration might happen anywhere from 3 months to 1 year, or even 2 years sometimes, because in companies like Walmart, or in companies like Home Depot or Target, we have like 100 departments within one company. And I say 100 department, 100 business domains within one retail giant. So they have a huge amount of data. Migration of data is not that easy. Migration of application is not that easy. So it takes enormous amount of time. It takes almost a year or more for these companies to migrate. And then until then, they'll have to parallelly run both in on-prem as well as cloud. So that is again a mammoth, it's a huge cost also for them besides effort. So they'll have to make sure both the cloud as well as the on-prem services are up and running. And then they will slowly retire the on-prem services once the cloud is steady. So whether it is cost, whether it is technological upgrades, whether it is security upgrades, or whether it is the compliance perspective or governance perspective, everywhere end users as well as the cloud providers are facing mammoth task. They will have to delight the customers. They'll have to keep improving, without which they'll not be able to be available in the in this competitive world. So that's where they are. That's how things are going as of now. Hope you understood, or hope you this was interesting to you. I don't know how useful this is, so I would expect some feedback, questions if anybody is having them. I'll be ready to answer.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a delightful and enlightening session. A gentle reminder to all the participants, kindly fill in the feedback link that has been posted in the chat box. And also, if you have any queries, you can submit it in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask. Students, if you have any queries, you can unmute yourself and ask. Any queries, students? We are given an option of unmuting yourself. Okay, then, sir, we'll wind up the session, sir, with the vote of thanks.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I call upon Dr. R. Parthiban, Assistant Professor, MCA, to propose the vote of thanks. Please, sir.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. R. Parthiban, Assistant Professor of MCA Department. Am I audible, ma'am?
You are audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Audible.
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay, good. Yes, yes. I have to say the relevance of today's topic. We are having something called cloud migration. Many of our new students from first year MCA, first year data science, we are teaching something related to cloud, how the cloud is working. But when the students are able to hear these words or these technical things from the industry person, that will be more useful for the people. I hope so. The students have utilized these sessions in a reliable manner. So they will learn a lot of things from the near future related to these topics in the theoretical concept of data science and related to that MCA program. So I thank the resource persons of today's class, today's session, for this wonderful session for our students and our staff. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the delivery and your content, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, it was a delight for me to share my learnings with the students, especially. So thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. So whatever you have delivered, that's what we are delivering to the day-to-day class. But whenever we are telling as a lecturer or a professor, the people not listen to us. But when the industry person is going to deliver the content, surely they will get benefit from the particular talk. Sir. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Murugan, sir. Thanks for joining in your busy schedule.
Thank you,
sir. Thank you,
for
sir.
the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Students, kindly fill in the feedback which has been posted on the chat box.